All right. Okay, well, we're going to continue with our nosebleed section of the workshop, and this week focus our attention on good morning, Pastor Manny. Good to see you. Connection came through.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're going to focus our attention on the this week on the second group of connector words that we find when we break down a sentence for diagramming. And of course, the first group we've been talking about for quite a while, the conjunctions. I'm sorry, there was one more part to the conjunctions I wanted to cover. It's come up before, but I wanted to give a little more detail. Pastor Robbie mentioned it a few sessions ago, and so I wanted to give focused attention on it for a few minutes just to close out this section on conjunctions, because we focused our time on the coordinating and subordinating. Again, the coordinating, right? Just think of it as joining parts of a sentence that are grammatically equal, and then the subordinating or joining a dependent clause to the sentence. There's a third group. Actually, there's two more groups of conjunctions or words that function like conjunctions. One of those groups is called the correlative conjunctions. We came across that actually in one of our passages that we were going through earlier. And these conjunctions, correlative conjunctions are essentially just a pair of words that are connected together, and that together have a conjunction type of function. All right, so they're called correlative conjunctions for that sense. So it'd be maybe a few examples might be they not only ate their breakfast, but also ate their lunch. And so here we have this word pair, not only, but also. And those together form the a conjunction called a correlative conjunction. Another one would be, I will meet you either here or at your house. Okay, here's another example, either or. Again, it's taken as a conjunction, as a pair. Another example might be, if he wants a ride, then I will take him. Okay, so if and then. Now we think of this as a conditional statement, but it is using this correlative conjunction to form the condition. Okay, another example might be, no sooner had I answered the phone than my signal died. Okay, so no sooner is paired with the word than. Okay, and we could come up with a number of them. There's some examples here from the list. There's several more. I'll give you a link that shows all of them. But basically, they are very common as well in the scriptures. So let me I'll have you guys identify. This was the verse actually that we first saw them in a while back. Pastor Jason, see if you can tell me, where is the correlative conjunction or conjunctions in this passage?
Romans 1 verse 14, I am under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians, both to the wise and to the foolish. Conjunction and.
Okay.
That's part of the envoy. I forgot the term. And then the conjunction both.
Which one here?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there's another one, both and
There you go. So those are again called correlative. So they come together, both and. Okay, so they're not treated separately, like both is not its own conjunction. It's coupled with and. So you could think of it as a husband and wife together.
Yeah.
So both and. So together they form, they have a conjunction type of role, okay? Let's look at another example. Tabs, let me give this one to you. Tell me where you see a correlative conjunction or conjunctions here.
Okay, Pastor. Romans 8:38 to 39. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any other created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus our Lord. The correlative is neither and nor.
Yes. And notice there's a lot of nors, aren't there?
Nor. Yes, Pastor.
Okay. So in this case, the correlative actually introduces, there's too many of them. It's going to take me all night just to highlight each of these, okay? But you can see, right, the correlative here is neither and then nor, and then we have it coupled with several nors, okay? All right, good. And he could have said neither angels nor principalities, neither things present nor things to come, but he chose to just use one neither, and then the rest were just the conjunction nor, okay? Okay, good. Renee, Pastor Renee, let's have you do the next one here.
1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 32 to 33. Give no offense either to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, so that they may be saved. Either correlative pair with to, pair with or.
Or, yeah. And there's two of them there actually, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do you see any others?
Um, uh, just, just, just us. Is that
What would that be paired with if it is?
so that? I don't know.
Yeah, this one's there's one more here, but it's a little tricky. It's a subtle one. Anybody else see it?
The also.
So that, Pastor?
No, so that's a subordinating conjunction.
Oh, okay.
I'll give you a hint.
Not
Yeah,
but.
not but. Yeah. Not but is like both and, sort of.
Okay.
Not a common one. But so we have here either, and then or, and then we have not but. Okay. Now, there are several other examples. These are just a few that I picked out. Now, what's interesting here is that with these conjunctions, these correlative conjunctions, you really don't need the first word. Okay? if you look at these, for example, I am under obligation. Paul really didn't need to say both here. He could have just said, I'm under obligation to Jews and or Greeks and to barbarians, to the wise and to the foolish, right? He really doesn't need the word both in order to communicate. Go to the next one. I'm convinced that, and then he said, neither death nor life. He could have said, I'm convinced death or life or angels or principalities, etc., etc. I'm convinced they will not be able to separate us from the love of God. He could have said it that way. Or in this next one, give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church. He didn't have to use the word either. But see, typically what these correlatives do is they intensify. Typically, the correlative intensifies or emphasizes the point. Okay? So for example, I'm under obligation both to Greeks, and they're highest on the social scale in the Roman, in the, you know, the Roman Empire and the mindset and the culture. The barbarians were the lowest. They were considered uneducated. They were considered dumb. But the Greeks were considered the intelligent, the socially elite. And so, and then the same with wise and foolish. Those are opposite ends of the spectrum. And so here, the word both actually accentuates or intensifies his point. He's trying to really bring emphasis. I'm under obligation both to Greeks and to barbarians. So it's emphasizing the difference here. It's intensifying what he's trying to communicate. It's the same if we were to go back to, I'm convinced neither nor. It's the same. It brings an intensity, which matches what he's saying in this passage in Romans 8. It's a very powerful statement on that nothing can separate us from the love of God. So he includes a correlative in order to, I think, give even more emphasis to the point that he's making. And then even in this one, give no offense either to Jews or to Greeks or to the church. Again, I think there's a degree of intensifying by using that correlative conjunction. So that's one thing to consider, is the purpose of them usually is to intensify the point. And then the second thing I want to mention about these is the correlative conjunctions are going to act either like a coordinating or a subordinating conjunction. They don't have their own unique, different way of joining. They're going to act like coordinating, which is the case for all of these. And notice the clue. We have an and boy in each pair. You see that? All right. So keep that in mind. If you see an and boy, so if you see and boy, then the correlative conjunction is going to act like a coordinating. Okay? So just treat it the same way. Understand it the same way as you do a coordinating conjunction. And we can test that out by going back here. Remember, coordinating conjunctions join words, phrases, or clauses that are equal grammatically. Here, both and is joining two Greeks with two barbarians. It's the exact same grammatical function. They're equal. So this is a coordinating conjunction. To the wise, to the foolish. Again, grammatically equal. We could go back to the previous. Give no offense either to Jews or to Greeks or to the church. Again, two Jews, two Greeks. They're all prepositional phrases, grammatically the same. And so it's a coordinating conjunction. All right. Now, there are another group of conjunctions that typically will act like subordinating conjunctions, those that do not have an and boy in the pair. Okay. Notice all of these do not have an and boy. They often will act like a subordinating conjunction. Okay. So all you need to do, I think, with these correlatives is just recognize that sometimes you'll have a conjunction that's going to have a pair. but it's not going to act any differently. It's going to either act like a coordinating conjunction, and you'll know that if you see envoy in the pair, or a subordinating conjunction, where you won't see envoy in that pair. You'll see something else. Okay. Now, typically, the most common that you're going to find in Scripture is going to be the um, but also, or neither, nor, either, or, both, and. Those are the ones, if, then you might see. Those are the more typical ones that you'll see, all right? And most of the time, they're coordinating, just FYI. All right. Okay, so that's the correlative conjunctions. They pop up every so often, and usually what happens is, like in these sentences here, if you're looking at it and you've got this word both, like what's both doing there? It's kind of sticking out. And so normally that's a clue that it's gonna, there's another conjunction there it's connected to. All right. So just be aware of these. They do come up, and usually, as far as exegetically speaking, they typically will serve as an emphasizer to within the passage. Okay. Are there any questions on these correlatives? All right, again, don't think of them as a totally separate class of conjunction. They are different than the others, but they will act like either coordinating or subordinating. So you're going to use the same criteria that you used before. For coordinating, just look for envoy. For subordinating, you're going to look for, if a clause follows this conjunction, then that's going to be your clue in that regard. All right. Okay. There's one other thing, and I think Pastor Robbie mentioned this group as well. In addition to correlative conjunctions, there's a fourth group of words that they're called conjunctive adverbs. All right. But they're going to behave just like a subordinating conjunction. So I really wouldn't worry about trying to identify or understand that they're just basically these are adverbs that behave like subordinating conjunctions. Okay. So that's, again, just look for the clause which follows them, and they will be modifying another verb in the sentence. Okay? Because, again, remember, subordinating conjunction introduces a dependent clause. Okay? So rather than trying to, figure out, okay, which is a subordinating conjunction, or is this a conjunctive adverb, or, you know what? Don't worry about that. I'm just making you aware, because if you guys look at any sort of English grammar, you might come across this term, conjunctive adverb, and just basically in your mind say these act just like a subordinating conjunction. In fact, I'll put that in parentheses. It's just an adverb that's acting like a subordinating conjunction. Okay? So, all this is to say the following. Technically, there are 4 types of words or groups of words that act like conjunctions. But functionally, there's really only 2. 2 kinds. That is the coordinating and subordinating. All right? So, don't get too caught up in, do I have a conjunctive adverb here, or, oh, this is correlative, or just identify those words, just like the process we spent a couple weeks going through, where look at the word that you think is a conjunction and see what follows it. If it's a clause, well, if it's an envoy, if it's and, nor, but, or yet, then you know you have coordinating. Otherwise, look for a clause. If you see a clause there, if you see a subject and a verb, then it's going to be a subordinating conjunction. Unless it's the word who, which, or that. Then it's a relative pronoun. Okay? So it's the same process that we've been doing to identify these conjunctions. right? The first thing, is it amboy? And then the second is it followed by a clause? All right. If so, it is a subordinating conjunction. Again, unless it is the word who, which, or that. In that case, it's a relative pronoun.
Yeah, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's a relative pronoun, it still acts to subordinate the clause, right, to something.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah. In that case,
all of this, yeah, all of this. I would just like to stress this and correct me if I'm wrong. So identifying the two, either coordinating function or subordinating function, affects our diagramming
yes.
of whatever follows the coordinating or subordinating connecting word.
Yes.
Am I
Because
right? Yeah.
if it's coordinating, the coordinating will not be modifying something,
Mm.
right? The coordinating
Yeah.
connects to
Mm.
grammatically equal can't say words, phrases, or clauses. It doesn't modify. It doesn't introduce a modifying clause. But subordinating, by its own definition, introduces a modifying clause. So yeah, in the diagram, the coordinating is just going to line up the two terms, like, you know, worship the Father, and then worship in spirit, and then I have a coordinating and in truth. Okay, so this conjunction's not modifying. The phrases modify, but not the conjunction. But if you have another one that says worship the Father by worshiping, by giving worship. No, that's not working. Worship the Father so that he would be glorified. Okay, in this case, we have the conjunction is the so that here, but it's introducing a dependent clause. Notice I have my subject, and then I have my verb, would be glorified. The so that is connecting the entire phrase to worship. And here is not connecting this phrase to worship. It's connecting this phrase to this phrase. Okay? So that's the difference. The coordinating conjunction just takes two grammatically equal statements and couples them together. But a subordinating one introduces a clause that's modifying something else. And here is not introducing in spirit. And is connecting in truth to in spirit. Okay? I will pray to the Lord, and I will wait for an answer. Okay? Here's a case where I've connected two independent clauses together with a coordinating conjunction. Again, and is not introducing a clause that's modifying something. It's simply connecting this independent clause with this independent clause. They're both parallel statements. So the coordinating and subordinating conjunctions have very different roles. They do very different things in the sentence. And that's why I like to, when I diagram, separate the conjunctions out. That's why I do it that way. Okay, you could have the coordinating conjunction can also connect like two dependent clauses. For example, he is the man who preaches well and pastors well. Okay, Now here I have, this isn't, well, this'll work. Okay, so who is a relative pronoun, but it's introducing then a dependent clause. And notice this coordinating conjunction and connects those two dependent clauses together. So here's an example I gave you where the coordinating conjunction and connects, in this case, two prepositional phrases. In this case, second case here, it's connecting two independent clauses. And in this third case, it's connecting two dependent clauses. Okay? So it functions differently. It just brings together two equally, grammatically equal statements. Whereas a subordinating conjunction subordinates the clause that follows it underneath another word in the sentence. Okay? Any, does that answer the question, Pastor Rob? Probably too long of an answer, but okay. All right, so that's all I want you to keep in mind. So when you're thinking about the conjunctions, just think about these two categories of words. Now, when we get to the end of these four connecting words, as we've gone through them, at the end, we'll come back to, I'll give you a sort of simple rubric, a simple way to test what kind of connecting word you have. All right, I've actually already introduced it, but it'll make more sense after we've gone through all of these words. Because sometimes, especially if this is your second or third or fourth language, trying to remember all the different, okay, is this a conjunction? Is this a preposition? Is it a relative pronoun? I can't remember. There's too many of these. How would you tell the difference? Well, you tell the difference by how that connector word is connecting what follows it to the sentence. And so that's where that whole time we spent on clauses and phrases is very important. So we'll come back to that, and I'll give you sort of a what I think is a simple rubric to sort through what kind of a connecting word you have. All right. But let's get to the next group. Oh, by the way, and I put these in your notes. These are 4 or 5. How many I got here? 5 links that are in your notes. I have these are some links regarding just conjunctions in general. I have one link here for correlative conjunctions if you want to get look that up, and then I have one link here for conjunctive adverbs. All right, so those can be something if you want to do a little more study on, you can. Okay. All right, so we've looked at the first kind of connector word exhaustively. That is a conjunction. The second one is the preposition. A preposition, simply understood, typically links a noun to another word. Conjunctions, we've noticed, can link, the coordinating conjunction can link a noun, can link a phrase, can link a clause. A subordinating conjunction links a clause, but prepositions focus only on nouns. They link nouns to another word. All right, so there are, in the English language, guys, there's 150, more than 150 prepositions. Anybody want to memorize all of those? Anyone really bored? I can give you, I'll give you the website. You can memorize all of them if you want. That'll be a lot of fun. So that's what I was saying earlier. You know, at some point you're like, there's so many connector words. How do I tell which one it is? I don't have time to memorize the 75 conjunctions and the 150 prepositions, and we're not even done yet. We haven't even talked about relative pronouns. So how do I do this? Well, one recommendation, as I told you before, I would memorize and boy. That'll at least tell you what the coordinating conjunction. So that'll take out a helpful amount of the conjunctions. And the second thing I want to suggest you memorize, I call it a whiff boot. All right. And that is the 9 most common English prepositions. All right. And they're right here. At, with, in, from, for, by, of, on, and to. Memorize those 9, and you've captured a good portion of the prepositions used. Again, those are 9 of the most common. I don't know the percentage of usage they entail, but memorize those so that you can spot them right away as you're scanning for the connector words, and you'll catch a lot of them. All right. Now these particular prepositions have a function where, again, they usually connect the noun to the word they modify. And so they have different ways that they modify, either by location or time or means or purpose or possession. So if we just look at the 9 most common ones, for example, can anybody tell me what the word at, the preposition at, typically, how does it work? How does it usually connect the noun? In what way? What question does it answer? What does it tell us?
Where?
Okay, yeah, a location, right? Where?
Location, yeah.
So for example, we might have an example of this would be she was at home. All right. Okay. Are there any other ways that the preposition at functions?
Time, Pastor.
Yeah, or time, right?
Yeah.
Answering the question when. So for example, we begin the workshop at 10 a.m. All right. So here it's functioning as it connects the word at to when we begin. Okay, answering the question when. Okay, how about the preposition with? With, how does that usually function? Let me ask Brother Manny. Pastor Manny, what this preposition with, how does it usually connect?
It indicates what goes with something.
Okay, so what question might it answer? I'll give you an example. I will, let's see. I will travel with Pastor Robbie. How's it working there?
It in this context, it answers the question who.
Well, what if I said I will travel with a dog? I'm not calling you a dog, Pastor Robbie. Okay, or I will travel with a car. That might help a little bit. Anyone have an
It
idea?
doesn't help me. It
No, it
doesn't help
Okay.
It answers who or what.
Okay.
Connects it with a who or what.
Yeah, these are
It's
all
hard to express it. Yeah.
Yeah, these are all nouns
Nouns, right?
that I got here. So it's connecting the noun to something, and my question is, how is it connecting it? I think this last example, I was hoping it'd be a little more clear. With is a tough one, but it's often answers the question, how
Yeah.
something's done, or location. Okay, another example of how he hit the ball with the bat. Okay, that's probably a clear example of how. All right. With is a little tougher. Let's try if. Pastor Manny, I'll give you another chance here. The word, or not if, I'm sorry, in. If is usually a conjunction. In. How does in typically work?
it answers the question where. It's
Yeah, a location. Yeah, so for example, we might say he went to the church in the mall. So it's telling us where the church was. Okay. How about, there's another, sometimes it gives an idea of how something takes place. And this one's a little controversial. It's a little theological, but that term "in Christ" is often can either work both ways, actually, as a means of kind of in the realm of Christ,
Yeah.
or some believe it's when that phrase is used, it's telling us of a means, how something happens.
Yeah.
So there's some debate there, but I kind of lean towards the idea of means, that it's telling us
Mm.
how, especially when Paul uses it in Ephesians, in whom we've been redeemed, in Ephesians chapter 1. I think there it's the idea of how, not where. So you can give that some thought. Oh, we have some nice music for our background. Okay, the word "for." Pastor Entz, are you there? Can you tell us, how is "for" used?
For usually for answers the question why or purpose.
Yeah, it gives a reason or purpose, which would answer the question why. So an example of that might be, we share the gospel for the glory of Christ. That's a purpose, why we share the gospel. Okay, good. Pastor Entz, any other uses for the preposition "for"?
Sometimes it can also be used to refer to something, for someone, for.
Okay, give me an example.
I want you to give this gift for my.
We could say it this way. Yeah, this gift
For my friend.
is for my friend. Okay. Oops, is for. Okay, so how would it be working there? Is that a purpose again, you think? Or is it something else?
Purpose, reason, object or some.
Yeah, here that's a little tricky, this one.
Yeah.
Let me give you another sentence here that might, how's it working in this sense? He ran around the track for an hour.
Duration.
Yeah, this is a time.
Time.
Okay. Or we could take this very same phrase, he ran around the track for his health. How's it working there now?
Purpose again.
Yes, purpose. Now, here, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. He ran around the track for he needed the exercise. What's going on here now?
Reason.
Okay, it is a reason, but is "for" still a preposition here?
No.
It's not. It is describing purpose again, so it has a similar function, but technically, again, just grammatically, notice it's followed. It's not followed by a noun, is it? It's followed by a clause.
Clause.
See the subject here, he, the
Okay.
verb needed. So
Needed.
it's technically, in this sentence, it's acting as a conjunction, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
in this sentence,
Yeah.
it's acting like a preposition. And we could actually match them and
Wow.
say he had bad health. Can kind of sort of match the last two a little bit. Now, does that matter exegetically? No, because it's going to have the same, it's going to diagram the same way.
Right.
See that? So exegetically, you're not going to preach it any different. However, I do want you to see grammatically there is a difference.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
So is that confusing anybody, or any questions on that? This word for is one of those, you know, there's some words in English that you love to hate, for and so and that, because they can function very differently. They're like, James talks about the double-minded man. These are like double-minded words in English. They don't know how to, they act differently. But this is why I want you to understand what follows it, because what it's doing in both of these last two sentences is exactly the same thing. The word for in both cases, you know, we would put in parentheses. It's answering the question why.
Why?
Okay. And in this sentence, he ran around the track for an hour. It's answering the question when.
When.
So it's modifying the verb because it's answering the question when. But technically, it is a preposition here in this sentence. Okay?
Okay.
So you're always going to be asking men, whether it's a preposition, a conjunction, relative pronoun, participle, you're always asking the question, what question is this phrase or clause answering? That's what we want to get to. Now, whether we identify it as an adjective or an adverb or a phrase or a clause, a dependent clause, independent clause, you know, all those things, subordinating conjunction, conjunctive adverb, you know, we can get lost in the grammar, but I just want to keep you thinking about how is it working in the sentence. And the key is just finding the connector word, because that's what isolates each phrase and clause, right? Going back to my little diagram at the beginning here. If I can get there. Yeah, this one. All right. The key is just finding the connector words. And we're just going through a bunch of exercises trying to identify those connector words and what they are. But at the end of the day, you're just wanting to know, all right, this clause or phrase that follows that connector word, how is that working in the sentence? What is it doing? What question is it answering? That's what we're trying to get to in all of this, okay? All right. Hopefully that makes sense. So, are there any questions at this point, guys? All right. Let's look at these the rest of, and again, we're just going through a whiff boot because I just want to show you how these prepositions can function differently. Oh, another function of in I forgot is or which. In can also say which one. So for example, the man in the red suit is the preacher today. Okay, here in is functioning as which one, which man? The man in the red suit. Okay, so that's another way that in can be used in a sentence. All right, let's see. Who have we? Pastor Jason, I'm gonna have you work on this one. From.
It It gives us the location, Pastor.
Okay, it can be a location. All right, so maybe an example of that might be they have just arrived from Manila. Okay. What other way can this preposition from be used?
Can also refer to scope. I don't know if it also refers to location, the scope, like from end to end, something like that, something phrase like that.
Yeah, that might be a location. The Lord's mercy is from the east to the west. So there it's still like a location.
Yeah.
How about this one? Let me give you a sentence, see if it, he fell down from the force of the wind. How's it being used there? Or
Like
go ahead.
that sentence, he fell down from the force of the winds, like the from there gives us the source, or
Yeah, I think source. Yeah, children come from their parents. Another example of that. Okay. Yeah, I think those are pretty common. We'll see a lot like in scripture, the Father from whom all blessings flow. There's another source.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good. Tabs. By. How does this pronoun work? Preposition work?
I think it answers the question. It can answer the question location, like by the sea,
Okay. Good.
or it can also answer the question in terms of who has done the action. Yeah, who has done the action, or who?
Yeah.
Who?
Means.
Means, yes.
Means or instrument. Basically, how. So let me show you. I can just take a. He went to the house by the river. Okay, that's location, right?
Yes.
Or he went to the house by a taxi. That's means. Okay. These prepositions, I mean, they, again, it's, you can have the same word have two very different ideas. And notice here, though, the context is what the context helps here. Really, knowing your vocabulary, because we know a river is not a way to get to the house unless the house is on a river. You see? So we would need to know the context, because sometimes you can say, I get there by land or by air or by the river. So this could be how, depending on the context. Or it could be a where. Now, in this case, in this sentence, we know what a taxi is. So a taxi is never a location necessarily. right? Because what if we're talking about a house and we're describing it? It's the house over there by a taxi, or we might say by the taxi. So again, context will actually tell us how this is functioning here. Really, from this just one short sentence, we can't necessarily know, all right, which way it is. We need more around it to give us an indication. All right, so again, we're reminded, context is very important on these, but it shows you that, yeah, you can take the same exact statement and it can actually, that word by can be used in two different ways. Okay, again, we ask, well, why does this matter? Well, it matters because how is this, in the diagram, it's going to look like this. If it is how, it's going to look like that. But if it's a where, it could be, it's not describing, in this case, it would be describing the house. And it would be telling us which house. Sorry, by the taxi. So that's actually a third category. And it will matter because when you're explaining the passage, you need to be able to explain how does this phrase fit in this particular passage. The grammar helps you identify the options, but the context is what will tell you which option is correct. Okay, so let me write that down. I think that's important to remember. The grammar tells us which are the allowed options, but the context tells us which option is correct. Okay, that's just your exegetical footnote for today. Any questions on that or comments?
Tim,
Yeah.
The preposition from, could we also add that it answers when or time?
Oh,
Like,
okay.
for example, from noon till 3.
Okay, yeah. The store is open from noon until 3. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, these prepositions are highly versatile as far as how they can function. All right. Good. Thank you. All right. Let's get through these last 3. Okay. Pastor Renee, why don't you do on?
On can be referring to location.
Okay. So maybe example, this might be the plate was on the table. Okay.
Yes.
What else? Any others ways that it could be used? Let me do this week. On the first day, God said, "Let there be light." How's it being used there?
It's referring to time.
Yeah. We could even say, will he be on time today? Okay. All right.
Okay.
Good. Brother Gary, are you there? Are you available?
Yeah. Yes,
What?
Pastor.
All right. Good morning. Can you do of?
Of.
How is of typically used?
Um, let's say Lawrence of Arabia.
Okay, how is it used here?
It's a from or play. Is it place? You can also where?
Yeah,
Can it?
in a way, in this case, it'd be maybe an identification. Which one? Which Lawrence?
Which? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's a description, identification or description.
Yeah.
Or it can be possession. Let's spell it right.
Yeah.
So, like for example, we have the blessings of salvation,
Yeah.
or the angel of the Lord. Something like that.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else come to mind? Of?
Tower of Babel.
Yeah. So that would be sort of, again, which tower?
Yeah, which tower?
So this idea of possession or identification, I think, is the most common use of it. And typically, this word of, follows immediately after the word it modifies. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one more. Two. Pastor Entz, two.
Answers the question. Who?
Who? Okay, well, give me an example. How would it?
From me to you.
Oh, okay. So like this, I wrote a letter to my
you.
wife. Okay, is this
My
telling
wife.
you who though, or is it answering another question? Certainly, my wife is a who, but
yeah. Purpose again?
yeah, this might be purpose, or
Why?
I wrote a letter, and really almost where.
Oh, yeah.
Direction.
Or
Direction.
maybe direction. Yeah, like for example, this is the way to
To the market.
To the market. Okay, that's a direction, or where. Another example might be, I called her to give. No, let's see. I called her to trying to think of another example.
To.
Yeah, see, the to is another one of those English words that it can act like a conjunction, right? Because I was thinking of of I called her to wish her a happy birthday. To is acting
That's
different.
purpose. Yeah.
Yeah, purpose. And technically, this is an infinitive, which we're going to
Yeah.
talk about later.
Mm. Mm.
Another
Yeah.
another fine English
Mm.
opportunity here. So to is a tricky one. So I should put it on our list of where's my list of, oh, I erased it. Right, the English words that cause the most problems as far as connecting words: for, so, that, and to is another one. Okay. All right. Let's start this. My signal has been doing okay, but I think I'm running out of data on my phone. So let me do this.
Oh boy.
Let me introduce this concept, and we'll do one example, and then we'll have to pick it up next week, because the house Wi-Fi is still bad, so I'm using my phone. And that is this: how do we identify which word the prepositional phrase is modifying? Again, this is really what we're interested in as far as the diagram is concerned. What we're interested in is, okay, I've got this preposition and the noun, the phrase, a prepositional phrase. I really want to know, what is it modifying and how is it modifying it? Okay, that's what we're getting to. So the question is, how do we identify what word that prepositional phrase is modifying? So here I've got basically four steps, if you will, to do that. And I'm hoping that if we'll do enough examples, that you'll, in your mind, you don't have to go through these steps one by one. They'll just come together. But the first thing we need to do is to confirm that the word we're looking at is a preposition. All right? And we do that simply by noting what follows it. Okay, a preposition will be followed by a noun. Okay, so for example, in that example before, if I have to the house, to is functioning like a preposition there, right? Because it's followed by a noun. But if I said to wish her well, now I have a verb here. You see that? So I no longer have a preposition. In this case, it's called an infinitive. All right? Or you could have another, I'll skip that for now. So all you're doing, though, is you want to look at what follows the word and make sure you have a preposition. Sometimes, like that word for I told you about, that one often can function either as a preposition or a conjunction. So we need to pay attention. All right. And once you confirm that you have a preposition, the second is to, okay, I looked after the preposition to see if it's a noun. That tells me I have a preposition. Now I want to look at what is the word right before the preposition. And the reason I'm doing that is because the preposition usually modifies that word. This is known as the proximity rule. All right. What is closest to the prepositional phrase is usually what that phrase modifies. Not all the time, but usually. And so what we want to do is test that. Okay. So for example, if the sentence was the man took his car to the house. Okay, so I noticed, okay, to. I'm pretty sure to is usually a preposition. That's what I remember, because I remember with boot, right? And T is for to. Well, let me test it. First, is it followed by a noun? Yes. All right, so that's good. Second is, okay, what word comes before it? In this case, it is car. So I ask myself, and this is the third step, does it make sense that to the house could modify car? It would make more sense as far as a direction. Maybe let me use this as my example. Might be a better, more clear example. I'll do by. Okay. Could it make sense that by the house could modify car? Could by the house modify car? What do you guys think? Any ideas? Is there, maybe ask it another way, is there a way that car could, that by the house could modify car? What do you guys think? Jason, you got any ideas? Or Robbie, were you going to answer?
If it answers if it points to a location, I think it could.
If it tells us which house, right? Tells us which house. The house, or the car, sorry. Man. If it tells us, yeah, which house? I had that right. Right, the house, the car, by the house.
Yeah.
Which car? Sorry. All right. So it's that car, the car by the house.
Yeah.
All right.
Tim, I think maybe it would be clearer if the sentence was he took the car by the house instead of he took his car by the house. Took the car by the house. Then it tells us what car, the car that was by the house. The car by the house.
Yeah. Okay. But the idea is just, you're asking yourself the question, could it make sense? And that's what, if it's yes, then that's likely modifying that word, because by the proximity rule, that tells us that the word closest to the preposition is normally the one that it's modifying. But we have to check that to see if it makes sense, because sometimes that's not the case. Okay. And then the last question is how. So that just answers, basically, in this case, you would say, by the house modifies car, telling us which car. Which car? The car by the house. All right. So basically, we're just looking for these four things. One, what is the preposition followed by? Two, what is the word before the preposition? The third step is, does it make sense that that word can be modified by the preposition? And then lastly, summarize it. That is, how does it modify? So let's apply these to a few sentences, and then we'll next time we get together next week, Lord willing, we can look at some passages and see how this works. All right. Again, I'm just trying to give you a rubric or an approach to figuring out how the prepositional phrase is working within the sentence. All right. So we'll start with I hope to be a simple one. We'll see how it goes. Tabs, let me give this one to you. So she walked between the posts. So identify the preposition and then go through the 4 steps.
Okay. The first preposition is between.
Okay.
And it's followed by the noun, the posts.
Okay. And we understand
and then,
the is an article, right? So it goes with the post. So post is a noun, right?
Yes, Pastor.
Okay. So we do have a preposition here.
Yes. Sorry. Is it followed by a noun? Yes. What word is before the preposition? The posts.
Before the
Words,
preposition.
Before the preposition. Sorry. Before is the verb walked.
Okay, so we ask ourselves, does that make sense? In other words, could between the posts modify walked?
Yes, it does make sense
Okay, in
if
what?
it modifies the word.
Okay, in what way?
Because it describes how where she walked.
Yes. Okay, so again, we have the short sentence, so I mean but we're starting with just some simpler examples. So the summary is between links posts telling us where she walked. All right, that's the idea.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to give, so there, and this is how you would diagram it. She walked, and then between the posts answers the question where she walked. All right. Let's give Pastor Jason this one.
He drove his car to his house in the mountains. So the preposition to,
All right.
then in.
Okay, we got two of them here. So let's start on the first one. Is it followed by a noun?
Yes, his house.
Okay. Now, how do we know the rest of this is not part of what follows to?
Because
What
of
tells us?
the, sorry,
Go ahead.
because of the preposition, it modifies another noun.
Okay. So how do I know that this one in the mountains should not be included in what follows to his house? How do I know it's something different or separate?
Because uh, that phrase it's a dependent clause or phrase. It's another phrase.
Let me throw it here. Oops. Oh man, I missed. I guess it didn't work. But actually, it's okay. Notice here, you have a connector word, right? To. Then you have another connector word, in. Those connector words separate the phrases and clauses. So you know that his house is what follows to, and then we have another connector word here. So that starts another phrase in this case, in the mountains.
Yeah.
So I just care about what follows the preposition, but only until I get to the next connector word. All right. So in this case, I don't include in the mountains with this preposition to because I have another connector word. So that's telling me that's another phrase. So I'm just concerned about the words between these two connector words. And yes, house is a noun. His is a pronoun modifying house. But so that's because we're going to find later some more complicated sentences, and we're going to be needing to remind ourselves the connector words are what separates each phrase and clause. Okay. All right. Sorry, Jason. So what word is before the preposition to?
Car or his car.
Okay, so car, his car. Now we ask the question, does it make sense? Could to his house modify car? That's sort of like that sentence we were wrestling with a minute ago.
Yes, Pastor, because it tells us that the person drove the car or his car to his house. It gives us the location.
Right. So if it's a location, it's answering the question where, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? So if it's answering the
Yes.
question where, is it going to modify a verb or a noun? You remember that discussion from a while back? There are those if it's where, why, how, or when, then it's going to modify a verb.
Yeah.
Okay, that's telling us about the action. If it's what kind, which one, description, that's going to modify a noun. So in this case, to his house is describing a location. So it's answering the question where. So is it going to modify car or is it going to modify a verb? Car is a noun, right?
I think it modifies the verb, the drove.
Yes. Yeah, that's going to make more sense.
Yeah.
Move this over. So we would say, could to his house modify the car, meaning it would have to be telling us something about the car. But that word to isn't used as a description. It's used to give a direction or sometimes a purpose. So we would say no to the first one. And then we have to go, okay, so it's not car, so I need to look at the next word, which is drove. And we would say that to his house could modify drove, telling us where. All right. And so then the summary of this would be what?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That phrase, the phrase to his house, modifies the verb drove that tells us the location or answers the question where.
Okay. That's the idea. Now, this might seem a little tedious or complicated, but it's something that we should be able to do in our mind. Get enough practice with these. You should be able to, as you get more comfortable with how these words work, you won't have to go through this in a tedious way. You'll just know. All right, but I want to go through several examples, and then we'll go through a few passages together as well to give you some practice with these. All right, so we'll stop here though for this morning, so that I don't have a huge phone bill. But I hope that at least, I hate to leave here. I'd like to do a few more examples, but we'll just have to leave it at that for now. The main thing I want you to get from this is just how the prepositions can function in a lot of different ways. And so our goal is to try to find out how it's functioning. And we do that by going through these 4 steps. First, we want to make sure we have a preposition, because sometimes these English words can trick us. And we simply tell if we have it by whether or not a noun comes after it, right after it. The second thing is then, okay, what word does this preposition likely modify? Well, that's when we go the other direction and see what comes before the preposition. That is usually the word it will modify. But we still need to make sure that that makes sense. So we have to ask, does it make sense that this prepositional phrase could modify that word that comes before? Sometimes the answer is yes, but once in a while the answer is no, as in this case. All right, it didn't make sense. Now, when we have a larger passage and more phrases and sentences, then the context helps us a little more. I know these examples I'm giving you is just one sentence, so that makes it a little harder in some ways. So, oh, we didn't do in the mountains, did we? Forgot about that one. Let's do that real quick. So I'm going to do in the mountains. So the first step I ask is it followed by a noun? So I'm looking at in, is followed by a noun. Okay, mountains. So I do have a preposition here. Second thing I ask is what comes before? That is the word house. So I ask, could in the mountains modify house? And yes, it could. Yes, if it is telling us which house.
Location.
All right. So then I would say in the mountains modifies house by telling us which house. All right. Now, I could have changed this. How do I know in the mountains is not modifying drove? That he drove in the mountains. Because it's a possibility, right? If you're saying where he drove, how would you know? We'll come back to that question next week. All right. Give you something to think about this week. It's your homework assignment. All right. Okay. So let's leave it there, and we'll pick it up next week with these prepositions, these phrases, and work our way through. All right. Prepositions are tricky, so we have to. I want to do this methodical approach so that you can sort of examine and confirm if you have a preposition, and then do some testing to see, okay, what is that phrase modifying? Okay. And I think as we go, I'll give you some helpful hints. Like that last question I asked you, how do you know where in the mountains goes? Does it go to house or does it go to drove? There is a couple of clues that help us to answer, and that'll be important because in Greek, there's lots of prepositions. All right. So here, when we're learning these, it's not something this is something that will help with understanding Greek as well, because Greek does the same thing. And you'll see the Greek authors move the prepositions around, and they do that on purpose. Just like in English, we move the prepositions around for a specific reason. So we'll get to that next week and look at some examples of that, okay?
Okay.
All right. Poor brother Manny. I think he ran out of Kleenex, so we're going to stop here so he can get some more for next week. All right, Manny, I'm going to ask you to close this in prayer, too, if you would.
Let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for